have quorum. It is now 7, so yes, you may.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here in person for the first time in 2 years. I think this is, in fact, nearly the 2-year anniversary of American COVID. I will call to order our March 3rd, 2022 meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Planning Commission. Can we get roll call, please?
Burgess?
Here.
Chambers? Harrison?
Here.
Milliken?
Here.
Phelps?
Here.
Patelko?
Here.
Pitts? Swan? Bias?
Here.
Great, thank you. And just real quick before we get started, I think we gotta, since this is our first meeting back in chambers, and we got some new technology, or just not new technology, but new protocols. We got a little primer on the mics, just a reminder to make sure they're on and talk into it, because these are streamed online and a lot of the public viewing is happening online. Any other protocols or things we ought to be aware of?
So the public comment happens differently now than we did prior to January of this year. So of course we're in person, so people can always come, be present, and speak during the designated time periods, which would be associated with a public hearing, which we don't have this evening, but always during item H, which is general public comment on non-agenda items. So what happens is folks who are present will speak first, queue up just like we always used to. They'll sign in, they'll speak here. When those comments are done, the in-person comments are done, Nolan Bergstrom, our community planner, for those that haven't met him yet, is working the phones. And so what happens is we have a general call-in number, and I'll just say it now so we have it. It is 888-382-9556. And unlike before where people left voicemails, now folks queue, they're live, right? And so they wait until it's their turn. Nolan answers the call, and they have the opportunity to speak for the allotted time period. And then when that call is done, we move on to the next one. And so, we'll experience it tonight if we have any calls during the non-agenda item public comments. And, we'll get the hang of it. Might be a little awkward at first. No one's done a few of the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings because they did meet in January and February, unlike this board. So, it's occurred a few times, but yeah, so that is definitely a different thing. Now, we are still streamed, right? And so people can watch this meeting from home. Yes, you have placards in front of you. I don't always know what the camera view is. It's probably not a terrible idea until we kind of get a handle on things to continue with some of those good practices that we did when we were only on Zoom, saying your name before, especially in a conversation when we're going back and forth. And maybe we'll not do that the next meeting once we watch the video and figure out exactly what can be seen up there. But just for now, I think that's probably good practice.
All right.
And that's how we'll work it tonight.
That sounds great. Appreciate it. So with that little introduction, we've got an agenda for tonight. Is there any changes on the agenda?
There are no changes on the agenda this evening.
All right, hearing that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
All right, motion by Vias. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Burgess. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion is approved. We were also sent the minutes from the December 2nd, 2021 meeting. That was our last meeting. We had January and February canceled. Were there any comments, questions, discussion on those minutes? Looks good to me. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the December 2nd, 2021 minutes?
So moved, Phelps.
Motion by Phelps, second.
Seconded by Chambers.
Second by Chambers. Thank you. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? I keep wanting to say raise your hand, but all right. Thank you. Any communications or announcements?
There are none this evening.
Great. We have no public hearings. So So we'll move right into discussion action items. And I guess I'll just remind the folks watching at home again of that call-in number 888-382-9556. All right, so our first discussion action item is the annual vote to delegate site plan review to the Site Plan Review Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Milliken. Beth, would you make my screen, see if it works. There we go. So we have thank you, Beth, three discussion action items tonight. The first is the annual vote to delegate the site plan review process to the Site Plan Review Committee. You'll notice that a lot of these items are meetings that we usually do at our annual meeting, which typically occurs in April. We have not had a meeting in a few months. We have very little business tonight in terms of public applications. We already know of public applications in April, so we thought we'd take care of some of this business this evening to free up our agenda in April. So each year, we ask the Plan Commission to authorize the Site Plan Review Committee to be able to handle the site plan process. And just real quick background, I know you guys know about this. We've talked about it a lot, and especially when you are reviewing cases. The Site Plan Review Committee is a committee made up of city staff from public services, so traffic, all the utilities, environmental. It is made up of folks from the building department, building trade. It is made up of planning and zoning, and I'm probably forgetting other folks. Often our development team from community investment and economic development attend. What we do at site plan review, it's very technical, right? We are reviewing projects that already have met all their zoning approvals or any other approvals that they need, and reviewing them against codes, right? So against what our water requirements are and water service line requirements are, against the zoning code, traffic code, the fire marshal attends. Sorry, Scott Brooks. The fire marshal always attends as well. And so it's a very technical review. We have spent the last 3 years really working on improving this process with staff to make sure that it runs smoothly and that we're reviewing projects both in a timely and efficient manner, but also well, so projects aren't running into hurdles when they get to the development phase. It is run by Bobby Durkee, who is planner in our department. He manages site plan review. He's kind of the facilitator and keeps everybody together. And every year he holds an annual meeting to understand from staff what's working, what's not working, what do we need to tweak. And we always offer the opportunity for those who go through the process from the public side. We have a survey ready that they can submit if they have concerns or questions to make sure that we're being responsive and understanding everything that works. So each year we ask for you to delegate it to the Site Plan Review Committee because it is listed as a Plan Commission role. And that is what the request in front of you tonight is. And so after your discussion, if you do choose to vote on it, it would be a motion to delegate site plan review process to the Site Plan Review Committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff or each other? Pretty straightforward. I'll just say I'm wearing my current hat in my current chair. I am indebted to the work of the Site Plan Review Committee, and you do great work, and it keeps a lot off our plates. We are not of the capacity or technical knowledge to do that work, especially when I love getting those emails and looking at those plans and seeing what's coming, and we just don't have the capacity to make those decisions. And so really appreciate the work that they do. So thank you. And having been through it on the other side, I know what a thorough and complete job they do, and the efforts they take to make it as efficient as they can. And seeing not any hands going up, can we have a motion to delegate the site plan review process to the Site Plan Review Committee?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Harrison. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Second by Patelko. Any other discussion on the motion?
I'll just say I also enjoy reading the reports and not having to worry about them after that, and that they're in good hands.
Excellent. Do you need a roll call vote or just a voice vote? Okay.
City Attorney Bear, roll call vote or voice vote for delegating the Site Plan Review Committee as a staff function versus a Plan Commission function?
All right.
Voice vote?
We heard the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say aye. Okay, great.
Sure. Item 1 is taken care of. Item 2 this evening, again, this is part of our annual meeting activities. Each year, we ask you to elect amongst yourselves a chair who runs the meeting, a vice chair who is the substitute meeting runner in the chair's absence, and secretary, and I spelled your name wrong, sorry, who doesn't have a whole lot of responsibilities, but is important in name. So, the current committee is Chair Greg Milliken, Vice Chair is Saki Vyas, and Secretary is Brian Patelko. And so, what we typically do, we take one role at a time. If anybody wants to throw their name into the hat or into the ring, how many puns can I use? We do so, we discuss it, and then we do a voice vote for each one. So with that, we will start with Secretary. Brian, are you interested in serving as Secretary again?
I am happy to continue serving as secretary unless anyone else would like. I'm smiling, sorry, it's hard to tell. Oh yes, my name, if that could be spelled correctly, that would be helpful.
Correct, I
probably.
will, yeah. I'm so sorry.
So do you need a nomination then for that? Or?
I mean, do you want to just do these all at once?
We can do that, yeah, sure, and do a
Does
vote.
anybody want to be vice chair or chair? I'm happy to remain as chair. I don't, this isn't like a big ego thing for me, but I am happy to continue in the present position, especially with the transitions, moving back in, and with what we'll hear is some pretty big stuff we got coming down the pike. So I'm happy to continue that unless somebody really strongly would like to take a whack at it, but this may not be the year for that. It's kind of what I'm saying. And then vice chair, I don't know.
Ditto, I'm happy to continue in the role unless anyone else would like to step in as vice chair.
So that is our slate.
So hearing none.
Can I nominate the slate for
Yeah.
re-election?
I would like to support. I think they all did a good job.
Excellent. And, all right, seeing no other discussion, all in favor of the slate continuing as is, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome.
Okay.
Get that
So,
awkwardness over with.
the third item for discussion tonight, and this has been on your agenda for all these canceled meetings, so I'm sure you are very familiar with it, having read your packets prior to each meeting being canceled for a couple of different reasons. And this is an amendment to the Planning Commission's bylaws. Specifically, it changes two things, and one, both of them relate to public comment. So in the past, it was referred to as citizen comment. We are changing it to public comment. That is something that's being done across the board at all of the city commission level, at all the board levels. And the city commission kind of made that change, and we're kind of working to make sure everybody's bylaws align with city commission's bylaws. If they have their own separate bylaws, some boards just follow whatever the city commission has. The second change is also in alignment to what the city commission has in their bylaws or in their rules, which is a public comment period of 3 minutes. In the past, we have done 4. City Commission changed it to 3. I mean, I think it was 3 all through COVID. And then formally made those rule changes back in December. And Plan Commission bylaws specifically stated 4 minutes. And what we've done in the proposal before you tonight is simply say, just take out the number of minutes so you have the opportunity to kind of move with the City Commission and the other boards rather than have your own unique set of times. And so those are the changes that are being proposed to the bylaws this evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for staff? Yes.
Yeah, I did. The question is not so much about the changes in the bylaws, so perhaps it's not relevant, but in section 2.7, when we're talking about the conduct of meetings for the Planning Commission, it appears that how public comments, and I certainly approve the change from citizens to public, anybody can come and ask questions, but or give comment. The way public comment is managed in the 2.7 section seems to be different than how we are on our agenda tonight. Could you speak to that and kind of
Sure,
explain?
can you tell me exactly which section you are referring to so I can pull it up?
It's page 15 of our packet.
Sure.
Section 2.7 in the A through L, it looks like there's a public comment on non-agenda before old business and new business, and then, of course, public comments available with each point below, and then another public comment afterward. And I only see, like...
We made that change. Commissioner Burgess, I'm going to have to get back to you on the answer to that. I believe we made this, we did used to have 2 points of additional comment beyond public hearing comments. And a number of years ago, 3 years ago, I'd say, 4 years ago, we made it just 1 because they were both kind of serving the same purpose. But that's not what's reflected here. So, City Attorney Baird, do you have any recommendations on how we handle that? Do we just strike it in do we make that change right now to formally remove to the duplicative public comment section? Okay, so it would be to, so right now there are 2 public comment sections. One is listed as public comments regarding non-agenda items, and the other one is just listed as public comments. We only need, we have, in practice, we do 1 at the end of the meeting, and that is public comments on non-agenda items, because the public has the opportunity to comment on every public hearing at the time of the public hearing. So what I would recommend is when you make your motion that you strike one of those 2, the 1 public comment section.
Okay.
And that's a good catch, Commissioner Burgess. I think, perhaps something was done in practice and didn't get caught up in the bylaws. But thank you for pointing that out.
A follow-up question then, if I may.
Yep.
If we are to strike one of those, I notice in our current approach to this that we have the public comment toward the end of the meeting.
Yes.
And the option here is for either earlier or later. I know that past commissions have gone through some very long meetings, and that can happen when there's, subjects that are of great concern to the community. One of the really unfortunate things of having to do these meetings remotely was that public comment was not very amenable to people. It wasn't very easy. But also not very easy for the public to give comment is to have it at the very end of a very, very long meeting. I wondered if the commission would be interested in keeping the earlier public comment and deleting the later one instead of the other way around.
I think the last time we had a very long meeting, the comments were attached to the agenda item, so they weren't the last, because there's comment time on, item I for new business, and then J for the end of the general comments. Are you suggest,
Well, what I'm thinking is, I think we still would have public comment attached to individual pieces of business, but we also have a general public comment for non-agenda items. And that would be the thing, is that I would be concerned with having somebody who wanted to say something, having to wait through a very, very long meeting to be able to do that, rather just have a chance to say what they need to say and then leave, and not have it to wait through the rest of the meeting. Wondered what the rest of the commission thought of that.
Thanks. I would just, especially after Commissioner Patelko's point, almost more firmly say that we should keep the earlier public comment period, given that if folks are drawn here to give comment on a specific agenda item, they are impassioned to stick around and held here by that item, as opposed to folks who may have other things on their mind that are non-agenda, getting them in and out so that they don't have to sit through a long meeting might be more accessible to people who live busy lives. So I'd support that.
Any other thoughts on this? Good discussion.
Commissioners, let me also add, one of your items at the beginning of every meeting is, are there any changes to the agenda? So you do always have the opportunity to shift things around if you needed to, if you anticipated a long meeting or not. Just wanted to put that out there. That's one of the first things that you do. Are there changes to the agenda? If so, what?
So Chair, are we looking for a motion to amend or to add this amendment into the package of amendments that we're considering this evening and then adopt them all as a whole?
Yeah, so we'll continue conversation, but let's say this is the only change. Then I think what we'd look for is a motion to adopt the changes to the bylaws. You can say conditional or with the addition of this additional change, and then we'll just have confidence that that'll get added in with the others as it goes forward.
That works. That sounds great. And I would ask that we would, when the change we had made would be to strike the J public comment and keep the G public comment earlier on. Thank you.
Great. Other comments or questions about the proposed amendments to the bylaws? Yes.
Thank you. I'll just say that the other two changes that were originally on the agenda, I support certainly changing citizen comment to public comment, as Commissioner Burgess already suggested. We have a county that's supportive of non-citizen public participation, and I think that to be consistent with the rest of the county and the city, that's important, as well as the time removal across the board as well.
Any other questions, comments? Excellent. I thought it was great to see the bylaws and the city commission bylaws and see them all together, and it was just a helpful review. So with that, perhaps Commissioner Burgess, would you like to make a motion?
Certainly.
Great, thank you.
And help me if I word this incorrectly, but I would move that we adopt the proposed changes to the Planning Commission bylaws with the addition of the change to the public comment as discussed.
Support.
All right, we have motion by Burgess, support by Vyas. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right. Thank you very much. City Planners Report. You
Sure.
are the agenda tonight.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause real quick. There are several items up under this heading, right? As always, and what you will always get in your packets, the site plan summary for active site plans. And so you have the list, the complete list for 2021, and then the list thus far for 2022 in your packet. You also have the annual report for the Plan Commission. And I'm not going to go over it in detail. I think it's pretty explanatory. It lists all the cases that you heard in 2021, both public hearings, not public hearings, citizen or resident application versus staff-driven items, and just kind of a summary, just so you can see everything that was heard, and it kind of serves as a reminder of the cases you've heard as you move forward into the next year. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that if you have any. But if not, I'm going to move into the city planner report, because that's going to be kind of the meat of our meeting, the remainder of our meeting tonight.
Thank you for all this information. It's nice to see sort of the year-end review, so thank you.
So the city planners report, like I have done over the past 18 months or so, I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about things that are coming forward to you over the next few months. This is an opportunity to introduce the topics to you, let you know what we're doing related to public participation and outreach, and talk about timeline and answer any of those questions for you now, so when things actually do come before you, they feel familiar to you. And maybe you've had the opportunity to attend meetings, watch one of the many videos that we have online on the topic as a way to better prepare for your discussion. So over the next 6 months, you are going to see a number of zoning code updates. Now, we have been slowly updating the zoning code since we approved the master plan in 2017. We chose to do it in an iterative, kind of incremental way, taking care of the most urgent problems, things that were causing barriers to redevelopment or infill development or more housing. And we took care of a lot of those in the first couple of years. We are now looking at bigger pieces, right? We've had NFP Phase 2, which you looked at last year. We had the downtown rezoning. And so we have 2 major pieces left. And then a few small ones, but 2 major ones. And the one that's going to be coming over the next 6 months is standards associated with commercial development. So that's new commercial districts, and I'll talk about this in a minute. It's kind of things that are secondary to the commercial building, things like lighting or landscaping, fencing, screening, sign code, and of course an updated map. And before, and I'll talk about those in detail in just a minute, but I'm going to start with some of our scattered text edits. It's really important that cities are kind of monitoring their codes and policies to make sure that they're working. And I think a lot of times we think of these big behemoth documents as static, right? Well, in 10 years, we'll make that change. And that's not how we've operated, right? First of all, we're doing this very small incremental change through our code, but we're even doing like micro changes since then. So we keep a running list in-house over the last 2 or 3 years for things that were hard to understand in the code, that didn't do what they were, didn't do what they're intended to do because of the way they were written, and everything in between in those ways. So we have a list of scattered edits that we're going to be bringing forward to you, and I'm going to talk about those right now. These are things that I'm going to bring to you for your review in April, and they kind of go across the entire code document, which you'll see in just a second. So again, this is kind of a running list that staff keeps, both from their use of the code, public's use of the code, the Zoning Board of Appeals, when they look at variances, if we're getting the same variances over again. These are things that have kind of driven us to kind of have this list and make these changes. So again, clarification of wording in the text, variance requests, how we use the code, and of course, if there's any best planning practices that kind of come down to think about things differently, those are the things that we've considered. So what does that mean? Here are a couple examples for you. So bed and breakfast. The Zoning Board of Appeals has seen numerous variance requests to bed and breakfast because the way it was written says that the owner and operator must reside in the same dwelling unit as the bed and breakfast operates. And so we've had cases where it is multiple adjacent buildings that are all part of the bed and breakfast facility, right? Owner can't live in all 3. They can only live in 1. So, that was a variance request. We had a bed and breakfast that was in a duplex, an up-down unit. Technically, that needed a variance because even though the owner was living in the building with the bed and breakfast, as the owner and operator, he wasn't in the same dwelling unit because they were separate. So what we've done is adjust the language based on how bed and breakfasts seem to be operating today, to make sure that, you know, the owner and operator is right there, but maybe not in the same four walls kind of thing. And so there's a couple of definitions like that that we've updated based on practice. There are a couple changes to the parking code. You know, one, to clarify some of our exempt areas, our downtowns. Downtown is parking exempt. That one hasn't changed, but clarifying how that exemption works in our neighborhood nodes and how it works with our small buildings. So, you know, we've always had these kind of exemptions for small uses under 2,000 square feet. And so just making sure the language is clear on what is exempt from minimum parking requirements and what is not. We found that some of our standards were written in the parking code, didn't quite work, right? And so we've made some adjustments like to the minimum parking requirement for industrial uses, which is done by shift, you know, number of employees at your largest shift. And we also have made changes based on how we can, you know, manage resident complaints and enforcement cases to make sure that the language is clear in the code so that we can explain it to our residents and, if necessary, you know, write enforcement letters. And that has to do with the change for how and where and for how long you can park your recreational vehicle in your yard. So those are examples of the type of changes that are going to be in this bucket that are coming forward to you. Another one is ground floor residential in commercial districts. And I think some of you at least will be familiar with this one because it's one that we've heard. I'm going to take this off because it's hard to talk. That we have had numerous variance requests for this particular standard over the last 3 years. So it's been on our running list, and so that's something that we're going to update now. I pulled this one out separate from the last slide because it's a little more complicated than changing the parking table or a definition, because technically the commercial districts still live in Appendix A zoning, whereas everything else that we've talked about so far lives in Chapter 50. And so Appendix A is kind of the dead zoning code, right? We're taking things out of it, reviewing them, updating them to put into Chapter 50. That's what we've been doing over the last couple of years. And if we need to update something, we update it in 50. In order to make this change for this pretty common variance request, it means we need to get the commercial districts into Chapter 50 to make that change. So rather than just making a quick change in the use table, when this comes forward, you'll see you know, that we had to add the districts to the zoning district list. And then we added it to the use table. And then we needed to bring the dimensional standards in too, so we had the right setbacks and height and those kind of things. So it meant changes in 3 or 4 places, not a large quantity of items to change, but it had to go into different articles. And so that's why I kind of called it out separately. That is another one of those scattered text amendments. The third bucket of scattered text amendments have to do with marijuana uses, both adult use and medical. Some of you were on the board when this originally came forward. You will recall that medical marijuana was a state legislature action, and it set a set of rules for cities to follow. Adult use or recreational marijuana was done as a citizen initiative, which had its own set of rules, and those did not necessarily align. So when we approved medical, when we approved adult use in 2020, there were things that didn't work between the two. There were just some different requirements, which has made administering some of these uses, all the licensing details, difficult. And so staff is bringing forward a couple of changes to the use section as it relates to adult use and medical to make sure that we are actually viewing them the same. There will be a separate set of changes which this board will not see, but the City Commission will see, that has to do with the licensing itself, and that's in Chapter 20 of the Municipal Code that has to do with licensing, and so there are changes that are being brought at the same time for that. And these are born out of our administration of the code and making sure that we're able to, you know, do it efficiently, that things are making sense, that, you know, uses that are the same are being treated the same in terms of their parameters. So the big three things that you'll see with the marijuana uses is making sure that the separation distances that are in the code for provisioning centers, which is where medical marijuana is sold, and retail facilities, which is where adult use recreational marijuana is sold, that they're the same. They're treated the same. They have the same distance requirements, the same distance from protected uses. We've also added some clarifying language for when those type of uses can co-locate on the same lot. What are the requirements? And some of these things are directly from the state ordinance in terms of addresses and entrances and separation, and then prohibiting drive-throughs. For a short period of time, drive-throughs during COVID were allowed for a variety of medical uses. Because of COVID, that is over, and so we're making sure that we're including in there that a drive-through is not a permitted accessory use for marijuana businesses. That is the sum total. Those are the three groupings of edits that will come before you in April for review. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about timeline and outreach. So the other bucket that's coming has to do with bigger commercial stuff, right? And so that is, first, the sign code. Sign code was actually written last year. We wrote it, we sent it to the sign companies, we sent it to the commercial developers around the city to get feedback. We ended up waiting to bring it before this board to come with the commercial districts because we just end up editing it when the commercial districts came with all the new commercial districts. So we just held on to it. But it has been out there in the public. It's online. Folks have been reached out to. We'll continue to reach out to folks on it. But that's still it's ready to go whenever we pull the rest of the commercial districts over. So if you go online to Imagine Kalamazoo, the proposed sign code is there. There's a presentation that has audio associated with it, and the draft is available. And again, we've reached out to the business community, neighborhoods, and sign companies, and we'll probably do another round over the next couple months. But that one is essentially ready to go. We just need to add the new commercial districts to that, to the permitted sign table in that section. Landscaping, screening, fencing, and lighting. Not expecting a lot of changes in these areas. Again, we're updating for clarity, removing duplicative or obsolete rules that exist, updating in illustrations, again, to make sure that the code is easy to use for everybody, and where possible, especially for landscaping, looking at how we can align and support the natural features protection regulations, as well as there are some goals for zoning in the community sustainability strategy, which I put the wrong acronym in there. So the sustainability strategy, which is now the community sustainability plan, that's why it's CSP, calls out some specific zoning actions, including thinking about landscaping differently. And so we'll try to incorporate some of those now. That plan is coming online in the next couple of months, so we'll do our best to kind of align with that draft plan, but those are the other things that we're considering in this set of changes. Okay, so here's the big one, right? This is kind of the big change. And so new commercial districts, right? And I'm happy to send this to everybody. Right now, we have a lot of commercial districts in the city, many of which aren't even mapped, right? They exist in the zoning code only. Then we have some of our new mixed-use districts that we've added over the last couple of years. So what we're going to do is, obviously the ones we've added over the last couple of years, if there are any tweaks that we need to make, we'll make those. Those are, kind of continue along. Things like commercial office, commercial neighborhood office, commercial neighborhood 1, commercial neighborhood 2, which are very specific districts that aren't mapped in a lot of areas, some of them not mapped at all. Those are going to go away. They had very specific, first of all, they're very narrow in what uses that they allowed. They often had other parameters, which we kept bumping into, such as maximum square footage of a business that existed inside, And I appreciate that, for example, when you think about a neighborhood use, you think about neighborhood scale. And so, at the time, we went with square footage of a use, not the whole building, but of the use. And, I think it's one of those things that was kind of artificially set. And so we had some businesses that were just over. And so they had to, do we get a variance? Do we have to go into another district? What does that mean? Commercial office and commercial neighborhood office, one of the other challenges we face with them are, retail versus service uses, right? And so retail is not allowed. However, a doctor's office is, for example, right? And so when you think about which is more intense, I guess is the way of phrasing it. A doctor's office may have appointments all day long, people coming and going and staff, where some retail businesses, it'll be a trickle, maybe, there's a peak time. Are those really all that different, right? How do those differ, and what are those issues, and how did we separate those into different districts where they were allowed and not allowed? So, taking all those challenges that we've had with those districts, the way it's looking right now is that we'll take those and end up with 3 new districts. Community commercial is going to stay. That is our big regional shopping district that we find on the outskirts of town. We find it all through town as well, but it's not really meant for small lot. It's meant for large lot areas for regional and citywide shopping. So it will stay, but where it's mapped will change. We'll have a less intense district, Community Commercial 2, for lack of a better name right now. Maybe that's the name it will be. That will look at smaller scale lots and kind of help with, some of the things that we tried to do with neighborhood districts. And so we, with the assistance of a couple of consultants, have looked at lot sizes in different commercial corridors to understand where the break is between different sizes, understanding characteristics like, is the commercial at the end of a residential block, right? Or is it out on a big road where there's no residential anywhere near, and how do those things differ? And then the master plan called out 2 different types of nodes, right? It called the neighborhood node, which we already have as a district. That's a walkable, small, urban area, and we have a zoning district for that. What we did not have at this point is one for the commercial nodes, which is slightly larger areas. And for those that may not be familiar with the areas it's located in the master plan, it's things like White, Parkview, Oakland, Westnedge and Crosstown, Westnedge and White's Cork, and Cork Lovers Portage are just a few examples of commercial nodes. So they have uses that serve more than one neighborhood. They all have a type of groceries like store generally. Larger scale development, more parking, but also serve the adjacent neighborhoods. And those differ from areas like Washington Square or Vine and Westnedge for the Vine neighborhood nodes, so different sizes. So old districts being collapsed, community commercial will stay. The BTR Park, the Business Technology and Research Park, that district will stay and continue on, and collapsing them into districts that are flexible, that are based on scale, and done in a way that we would expect would support development in a thoughtful way. And so we're not trying to come up with artificial rules to regulate things that aren't really getting what we want at the end, and just kind of cause barriers and problems for our development. So that is the way it's starting to shake out. I am working on the map now. We are talking about a lot of parcels, thousands of parcels. So this is on par, bigger than the scale of natural features protection. And it's taking a while, right? Because I'm going parcel by parcel, area by area to kind of understand as much as I can, going at that kind of pace to understand how, what's mapped there now, is it right, and what should it be? So the districts, the consultants help us come up with the standards. Over the next couple weeks, I'll get those written in a format that can be reviewed, and then we'll work on the map. So here's kind of the timeline. So next month, we'll do the small scattered sites text edits and bring them forward for you for a public hearing, have a conversation, and if you're ready, can vote on them at the April meeting. In the meantime, we will be working on the drafts of all of these edits. Again, sign code is already written, and the landscaping, fencing, lighting, and the new zoning districts are in the process of being drafted up right now for public review and comment and editing. And then the map. The map will be done sometime this month and will be up online. We're going to use a similar system that we use for natural features protection. And for those of you who remember, it was that great interactive map where you could roll your cursor over your property and it would tell you things like, this has been mapped, this is being proposed for natural features protection because of slope and because of woodland. And so we'll figure out like what those information boxes are for this, maybe probably what your zone now, what's being proposed and why, and then a reference to the code standards. And so we'll have that up. We're going to do a series of meetings, probably a mix of virtual and in person. We'll work with neighborhoods. We have a lot of neighborhood business associations that we're going to make our rounds to in April and May, and then bring it forward to you, and we can discuss about whether it's brought in one big chunk and done over 1 or 2 meetings, is brought in a couple chunks. We can figure out as we get a little closer what the best route is to make sure that our public hearing allows everyone to speak and understand and review as we get there. So that is what is coming. Does anybody have any questions? I know it was a lot of information. This PowerPoint is going to be up online mid next week with the drafts, so people can kind of see where everything is going. So this will be on Imagine Kalamazoo page.
Thank you. What questions do people have? Surely there's questions.
A question. So I'm thinking about the rezoning that you're talking about, and some of the pushback that we got when natural features was presented was residents coming up and saying, well, I didn't know you were rezoning my, I didn't know you were rezoning my parcel, and it's going to change the value of my home. And I see that you've got a mailer going out to all the properties being rezoned, and I very much appreciate that. I wonder if you can speak to what some of your expectations are for when we might pass rezoning, just so that we can sort of, and you don't have to talk about it now, but as we think about it, something we came up with natural features, sort of the second round was, we wanted to get it passed soon, but it really wasn't ready at that first review, and so we had to push it back another month. And I guess what I'm asking is, can you speak to when you do hope to have this passed, and then how we can most effectively work backwards to make sure that everybody has the right communication, and we can kind of talk it through both at this dais and also at neighborhood meetings?
Absolutely. So I thank you for pointing out the mailer. I don't know if I said that out loud or if it was just on my screen. When we post the map online, we're going to send some sort of mailer to all the properties that are being impacted, just so folks know, because of the sheer quantity of parcels that we're talking about, what's being proposed and what the update is and how they can get for more information. At that point, hopefully we'll also have dates of meetings and things, so all of that would be on that mailer. That is not the notice, right? I mean, that's an I want to say extra, but it's not the required notice associated with the state requirements for rezoning. That's just something that we're going to do kind of at closer to the beginning of our process to make sure folks know what's going on. So mailers to property owners would happen again prior to Plan Commission hearing. So I put May, June, July on here rather purposefully, right? Because I think we're going to need to kind of see how things, where things go and how much change there is, as we go through the map. As I said, community commercial as a district is remaining. Where it's mapped will be a little different. Excuse me. you know, the commercial node and the other new commercial district, again, CC2 just for now, you know, are new, right, and are replacing other districts. And so we're going to have to be very mindful about what that means in every, you know, for each area. So I put May, June, July on there so we could kind of see where the conversations go. And if we need to adjust, we can adjust. We can always choose to do things in, you know, a different order, right? So if we get to the point where we're very comfortable with text and feel comfortable moving that forward, we have that option and could choose to do a map update at the next meeting. We can do it all at once. Again, you know, we can be, I think everything that you just said and the lessons learned that we learned from the downtown rezoning and NFP, we're trying to encapsulate into this to make sure that we're being thoughtful. Because after this is residential zoning, right? So when this gets handled, then we're going to turn to residential, which will be even more parcels, right? And even bigger, and homes, and yeah. So yeah. So ideally by the end of summer, right? But you know, we'll do it as we need to do it.
I think that's a great question. So to follow up on that, I mean, if we just use May, June, July, and that's with city commission, that gives us April, May, and June of our meetings to kind of go through this process. And I want to work with staff and attorney's office to sort of figure out. So, you know, April, we know we're going to have these scattered text edits. We'll have a public hearing on that. Theoretically, that should go fairly straightforward. I don't want to prejudice anything, but one would expect fairly straightforward. And we'll have a more thorough review of specifics on what this is. It won't be a public hearing. Obviously, we'll take public comment on anyone this year. So then the question is, do we have a public hearing in May and see what comes of it? And then we can always continue the public hearing to June? Or do we not even post a public hearing in May and just wait to June? But obviously, we'll have a presentation in May. We'll take public comment. People will know there's a meeting in May. I don't think we need to make that decision now, but I think, you know, be thinking of that, especially, you know, between now and April, but especially I'll probably ask that question, and we'll have this conversation at the April meeting when we get that next presentation, when we see the nature of the changes in a little more detail, and maybe even hear some comments from people. We'll kind of get a sense of, all right, well, some of this sounds pretty easy. We can maybe knock out lighting and landscaping and get that done.
Right.
You know, that's kind of where my head's at. But if we get to June and it's like, oh man, this is a lot more, and we need to push it to July, we need to push it to July, and that's what we need to do. And we'll do that.
And Chair, you know, at each meeting, I have the city planner's report, you know, opportunity where I can pause and say where the project is, where I can present pieces in a public setting for folks to hear and comment and for you to digest as we go along, so that, you know, expect a more detailed presentation and probably some materials in your packet for April, so you don't have to squint up at the screen on this, right?
And if you would, please, and I assume you would, continue to let us know, or not continue, but please let us know as these presentations are scheduled, virtual and in person, and just
Right.
probably saying it again, remember our role when you go to these meetings. If don't call everybody up and say, hey, we can't be there in quorum. If there happens to be 5 of us there, that's just a happy accident. Just don't talk amongst ourselves. And remember, if there is public comment, don't stand up there and say, this is the greatest thing ever. I love these changes. You know, you got to be cognizant of your role. But I think it's definitely worthwhile to attend and continue our education, because these are significant changes and there's a lot that's going on here. And there will be people that will come and they will have their passion points. There will be they will be enamored with, positively or negatively, with specific elements within the full volume of changes. And some of it, our job is to sift through that and decide, okay, is that a worthwhile change or is that not a worthwhile change? And doesn't mean we throw the whole thing out because of one point. It may mean we have to pause on that section, or we may need to make a tweak here or there. I'm not saying the comment isn't important, but we have to weigh the whole versus the specific type thing. So, and hopefully that's what the importance of all this initial information gathering and outreach is that all of that can come out early on and staff can take that in and adapt to accommodate those comments early. And when it comes to us, it's pretty polished. One question or one comment or wish I would have, as you send things to us, is it possible to send us links to Appendix A, Chapter 50,
Sure.
where those are? Because sometimes I admittedly struggle finding exactly where the right thing is and that sort of
Right.
thing.
And
That would
that
be
is a good
helpful.
point. We are operating with with zoning rules that spread two documents. I mean, they talk to each other. They don't kind of, they do talk to each other. And as we take out one, it goes into the other. One is more static and one is actively being updated. So yes, we can certainly alert you to those things. Know that we're not going to make any changes to the static document, Appendix A. If we're going to change it, we're going to take it out and put it into Chapter 50. I know that this has been kind of a pain, right? I know that my staff has struggled with it, in working with residents to make sure that we're applying the right standards. One of the advantages of doing this process is the ability to go through these sections and have these detailed conversations with the community. Having the whole thing come at once, all of the commercial, all the residential, manufacturing, lighting, signs, administration, things kind of get buried and lost when it's a ton all at once. And so there is certainly an advantage to having been able to take small pieces at a time and have conversations. Yes, it's a little messier, but I think that the community conversations have been stronger as a result.
Good.
And that's all I have for my community planner report tonight.
Any other questions or comments on this? Yes?
This might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I'm just curious, when we were looking at the zones that were going away into the new ones, do you anticipate generally that things will be going into at least a laterally permissive or more permissive, or do you think anybody's going to be going into a more restrictive use?
I think that, in terms of what's allowed uses, it'll be fairly lateral. I think that there will be some challenges with community commercial. It is stated as a regional shopping citywide district. It has a minimum area, if you're rezoning it, which is 1 acre, yet we have it mapped throughout the city on parcels that are a ½ acre or less. Community commercial allows for pretty intense development, right? Tall, big setbacks and those kind of things. It is a false promise to say that you could achieve all of those things on the small parcels, right? Because there's not enough space to do that. So I think that is going to have to be a really key point for us to discuss, because the resulting district that exists within the neighborhoods, and on those, more urban corridors where CC exists now, where we might change it to something else, perhaps they can't go as high, or perhaps the setbacks are different and those type of things. and the conversations we are going to have is the importance of scale of development, and what could really happen on a parcel without having to consolidate the whole block to give you enough space for the building, the parking. We've really, I'm jumping ahead, but I'm going to answer your question because this is really fascinating. As soon as, it's not just zoning things that change, right? For anyone who's done building development, once you get over a certain number of units, once you get over a certain number of stories, once you start to combine different types of uses, you start to kick in requirements like sprinkling, which has a cost associated with it. Number of entrances, if you're going to have an elevator, and all of these things. And each time you add that to a project, either you need to find more dollars, right, to pay for those things, and or your building gets bigger and bigger and bigger, or taller and taller and taller, so your pro forma, your balance sheet for development works out. And so that's why I kind of said, in some cases, it's a bit of a false promise, because it couldn't, some of the standards that exist couldn't quite work. Going back to just the use part, I think the uses are going to be very lateral.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Well, our second quarter is going to be a little busier than our first quarter of this year, so buckle up.
Beth, you can stop the share of my screen.
Thank you. So that's it for your reports.
It is. Commissioner.
Jason, all right. Well, that brings us to public comment. Public comment. Are there any public comments this evening? All right.
Hold on, I'll get out of your way.
Don't.
And you can sign in right here, please.
She took my thunder.
Hello. Thanks for volunteering, everybody. I saw the county. I just came from a county meeting. The doors were locked, and there was no public notice for the meeting. And I don't know. I'm a huge fan of open, transparency, easy, accessible. I love that you guys are online. I was like watching you guys while I was in that meeting. It was super interesting. And I would like to see that for all the boards. Anyone to be able to come and share their mind. But thanks for all the work you're doing. Thanks for putting it online. I know it's not specifically you guys, but just to spread that notion throughout everybody's thinking. Thanks for that, and coming and volunteering. I just want to echo that idea of being available for people that want to engage with their government. If the government is doing something, I really hope it's something they're proud of, that they want as many people to know about as possible, that they're not trying to hide away in some dark closet somewhere that's really scary with skeletons and all that stuff. Just like bright, shiny, hey everybody, look at this. Have as many people share it as possible. I've noticed that some of these meetings, I'm filming myself right now, but I'll be filming people, and some people are just shy about cameras, but some people, when they start talking with a lot of acronyms and a lot of 3 letters, and I'm like, what does that mean? But I can't say that because I'm in the audience. So anyways, I just want to get that out there so everybody that's listening can hear. And I have seen a lot of comments for whoever on Facebook. A lot of people are saying they can't hear the audio very well, and I think people know about that, but I just want to reiterate that point. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I don't think there's other public comment this evening. How about on the phones, Noah?
Hello, caller ending in 7419. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Hi. My name is Tina McClinton. Hi. My name is Tina McClinton.
Hi, Tina. You have
Hi.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Tina McClinton, and I'm calling because I know you're trying to, and I am calling, I am from Kalamazoo, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo. My message is, hi, my name is Tina McClinton, and I'm calling because I know you're trying to take away the last green space. I am from Kalamazoo, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo. My messages. I don't know what's going on with your messages. I'm trying to call and ask you to fix the storm drains and the sewer lines in Southtown neighborhood because we flood so bad. And please do not take any more green spaces away in our neighborhood because we flood. And accept Southtown neighborhood as a neighborhood because Southtown neighborhood was funded in 2015 and we've been ignored and shoved underneath the rug for way too long. It's been 4 or 5 years we've been fighting this same battle about wanting you to fix the problems that you have caused in our neighborhood by taking away green spaces to build. I have nothing against you building apartments anywhere, but not in a floodplain. We already have your sewers that back up in our homes and back up in our streets, and this happens 2 to 3 times every single year, and no one does anything to help us. We have one little green space left in our neighborhood, and this little green space is wetlands and it's on a floodplain, and it helps save our homes from being underwater. None of you would like your homes to be underwater like we have to deal with. Thank you.
That's the only public comment at this time.
All right, thank you. City Commission Liaison, Commissioner Pradle.
Commissioner Chris Pradle, nice to see you in the living flesh.
Yeah.
Anyways, I appreciate all your service and congratulations to everyone who was elected as officers tonight as well. Appreciate you. I promised in my role as liaison to provide updates about our votes at City Commission that pass on from your actions. At our December 20th meeting, which feels like an eternity ago, doesn't it? It feels like dog years since that meeting. But was the ordinance to rezone the 3 properties on Denon and then also the one on on Alamo from residential single dwelling, which was that RS5, to the residential duplex district, or RD19. So, it passed for the City Commission as well. At our meeting on January 18th, we approved our fiscal year 22 budget, which was a $245 million budget. Pretty significant budget. A lot of great creative ideas this year that we're implementing and trying, so we're very excited about those. And then at our last meeting, we adopted some rate increases in both water and wastewater as well. I know that's, it's oftentimes very tough on residents to do, and especially some of our lower income residents, but I think that's the greater onus on us to figure out creative strategies as a city and with our community partners to figure out how to support those people who are struggling with the rate increases, but also to do everything we can to take strategies to bring people out of poverty and create intergenerational wealth and those sort of things as a community. But I will say this, and I share this to City Commission, as you're talking to people, if there's one thing that we think a lot about, it's these financial challenges for people who are going to be disproportionately impacted, but reminding ourselves that we've gone decades of underinvesting in our utilities, and especially in the phase from the Great Recession from 2008 to 2012, we underinvested in what we should have in infrastructure, largely because we had to. If you look at our capital improvements budgets, they are exploding, right? And it's because they need to. And we want to continue to build infrastructure system that we can be proud of, and that hopefully when our grandkids are someday drinking this out of the same faucets, that we can be proud of the utilities and the wastewater systems in our city, that we're not waiting 2.5 weeks to have a water main repaired on our street and those sort of things. So I think it's very important we do it, and it's tough decisions to make like that, but it's the right thing to do. It is beautiful out today. It was sunny out, but as you can imagine, probably one of the number one things we'll start hearing about are pothole complaints. So if you do hear from people who are concerned about potholes or street signs or lighting or any things, we actually have a site that you can go to, and you can put in a complaint or an issue that you're having and have it addressed. And I have experimented with it myself, and I've had people I know close to me try to experiment with it just to make sure that we're getting exceptional service and getting responsive to people as well. But if you go to kalamazooCity.org/report streets, you can jot that down, kalamazooCity.org/report streets, you can report those issues for potholes. And I've noticed already some potholes have been filled, but they get missed. There's a lot of them going on this time of year. And that leads me to the next thing. There are going to be two pretty major significant street projects that are starting here pretty soon. One is on Parkview. And the neat thing about what we're doing on these major streets now is like we did on Cork and what we did on Portage Road, is before what we would do is we would just replace the street, right? And so then if a water main broke and then a water main broke again, or if a sewer line needed something done, then we would tear it up and then patch it up, right? So now what we do is we really prioritize and try to do all those things in one giant swoop. So that way, when it's done, it's completely done for a while. And it makes sure that we don't waste those assets that we've invested in by, tearing them up at a later time. So Parkview is going to be tore up this year. So from Oakland Drive to about Tamsin, which is about halfway point from like Oakland to Drake, is going to be tore up this year. But it's pretty bad right now. So you'll be glad when it's finished, and there'll be some pretty nice non-motorized enhancements as well with that as well. The other one we're really excited about is Stadium Drive. Right now we're doing a culvert repair. So we're repairing that, and that's the portion the city's taking care of, but then MDOT takes over and is going to be doing some pretty significant repairs to Stadium Drive. Why that's exciting? So if you go on Howard and you saw where we added that sidewalk, that big long sidewalk this year, again, trying to improve safety and non-motorized ways in our city, Stadium Drive is going to start having non-motorized safety enhancements as well. You're going to start seeing things like, island trees and, that sort of thing and whatnot as well. So that's exciting. You'll see some changes, but it will be a bit of a headache here in the short time. And then lastly, we have quarterly bulk trash pickup as well. So that's in March. So if you know anybody who needs to take care of those things, you can go to kalamazooCity.org/bulk trash, and you can look up to see when yours is in particular and see what the rules are for that. If you have some issues where things aren't picked up, you can report those there as well. And then also, just a reminder that brush pickup starts in May and runs through October as well. And then I also just wanted to make sure to share as well, the way it works is that the mayor typically will appoint us as liaison roles to these different commissions and boards. Most of us serve, somewhere between 1 to 3 of those each as a commissioner on top of being a city commissioner. And so it looks like I will likely be the main liaison to Planning Commission, and then Commissioner Decker is going to be alternate. So we will do our best to make sure we're communicating with each other so that somebody's here each meeting, and possibly both of us as well. So anyways, great job. It looks like we've got an exciting quarter to work together on these things, and yeah, let's get to work. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any questions? One question, Commissioner Pradel, if you don't mind. A couple weekends ago, you had a retreat. I don't need a full report, but is there anything that came out of that we as planning commissioners should be aware of or should have in mind, especially as we go through these zoning ordinance updates?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here, but that's good.
Sorry.
Keep me on my toes. So
you're earning your pay tonight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my $550 a month.
Yeah.
So anyways, basically the biggest thing I want to take away for the community to know is that we were very intentional as a community. We have a biannual survey that we do out in the community, and it's done both by random sampling, mailing, but also we do it where people on social can respond and people can share and encourage other people to do that survey. So through that, and also through like ARPA surveying, we identified 5 priorities that we're really going to focus on in the community. So you're going to see these reoccurring themes over and over and over again in terms of like where we're putting our money with the budget, what we're focusing with community planning and those sort of things as well. But those 5 are housing, infrastructure, safety, youth, and economic development. I'm trying to get this like elevator pitch down so if people ask me that I'm ready for it. But so at the retreat, we focused on 3 of those. We focused on housing, we focused on safety, and we focused on youth. And so the housing, they presented, if you get a chance to look back at the minutes or the PowerPoints, I believe those are posted on the website somewhere. But Director Kick presented on 9 different strategies that they're doing in housing. I think it was like $8.5 million worth of investments in different housing strategies. Really some pretty cool and innovative things that are coming up that they're working on, both from changing to ordinances that need to change to make things happen and those sort of things. So that was a big focus of the retreat and presentation. So you'll see a lot of those roll out. Second one, safety, is just recognizing, and especially, gun violence tends to be more pervasive when the weather improves. I'm no stranger to that. I taught in South Chicago for 2 years. Like, these first days in March and April can be dangerous days for communities. And, we are grappling nationwide, but certainly locally with gun violence. And, we heard from both our chief and our deputy chief about strategies that they're hoping to deploy, and we just kind of heard their philosophies in terms of how they want to approach that. But we also committed $1 million in conjunction with the county, so $2 million total, to combat gun violence through creative strategies. So you're going to start seeing some of those dollars roll out, and organizations' ability to apply to see how they can implement those strategies. And then for youth, so this all kind of started to snowball from some conversations that we really wanted to see Rocket football integrated into our Parks and Rec department and work, because there's a really large following in our community, and in some instances upwards of like 500 to 700 youth who partake in Rocket football. So we see that as a really positive outlet for our community to partake in, and we really want to see our city invest more in that. So from that conversation, we're starting to have conversations about ways that we can create a growing investment in youth strategies and employment opportunities and things for youth, so that really the kind of the North Star that I'm trying to push us for is that what can we do to make sure that 100% of our youth have something positive in their life to direct themselves to every single day in this community, right? That's what we want to aim for. And we recognize that's not something we can do by ourselves. So there's been a subcommittee formed, and Superintendent KPS is involved with it. We have Meg from KidNet who's involved with it. And I really think this is an exciting time. I mean, I think something big is going to come out of this. And I don't know what that is exactly yet, but I feel good that something powerful will come from that. So now next up, what we're going to do is some of our committee of the whole meetings, we're going to focus on economic development and infrastructure at some point to address those and the priorities with those as well. So that's kind of the cliff notes, if you will, of our 7-hour retreat.
Well, my motivation in asking that was, as we go through these amendments and as you sit in these meetings and hear it, if there are trigger points or things that you sense or in your conversations with city commissioners that you think, that ain't gonna fly, or that's gonna be a problem at the city commission level, share that.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear it, because
Absolutely.
the most frustrating thing at our level is when we go through all the work, send it on, and then it,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the kind of dialogue that is
Absolutely. And,
uber
I wanna be
helpful,
as-
and we'd love to hear. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I'd love to be as accessible as possible to you guys as well. So, especially as it gets warmer too, if we can ever go grab a cup of coffee outdoors, or if you ever want to give me a call or shoot me an email or anything like that, I'm happy to dialogue with anything as well. And, I do my best to try to stay in touch with my colleagues on the commission as well on a pretty regular basis. So
Awesome.
same to us as well. If there's anything that you can, pass along to us, we want to keep those ties open. And, it's a big Kalamazoo team here. We're all in the same boat, and, so we'll do what we can to keep each other moving along and being successful. So.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate you guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Last but not least, planning commissioner comments. Commissioner Burgess.
I guess I'll just say that I want to thank the staff for, I'm looking forward to all that we're going to be diving into in the coming months, and thank the staff for all the extensive work they're doing on all that. And also thank you for structuring it so that we'll be tackling the less complicated ones first and going toward the more complicated ones later. And also looking forward to those community information events to soak up even more information than we get along the way with our usual packets and information, and understand the potential pitfalls of those events, and just a chance to take in more info and hear opinions, and not so much want an opportunity to not an opportunity to really share ours, but to soak up as much as we can. I'm looking forward to it all. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I was made aware of a program that I want to share with everyone watching at home. Thanks to Treasurer Thomas Whitener at the county for making me aware of this, but the Michigan State Housing Development Authority has opened their application period for the housing voucher program for those struggling with rent for the low-income community in Kalamazoo County. And that window to apply is March 8th at 9 a.m. through March 15th, closing at 3 p.m. And that's just to get on the waiting list. From there, you'll be contacted, and you can find all this information on the Housing Development Authority's website. I think it's pretty prominently displayed there, but I just know that, I mean, we are kind of seeing the end of COVID, hopefully, and I know that despite that, lots of people are still struggling to make ends meet. It's been a really hard 2 years for everyone, almost exactly 2 years. So if you are struggling with rent, take a look at the Michigan Housing Development Authority website. That window opens again on March 8th at 9 a.m.
I just wanted to thank the city staff for inviting all of our planning commissioners to the DEI meeting that was hosted by Dorla Bonner. I was able to attend last month, and it was very informative, getting a chance to learn what city staff goes through, seeing the DEI work that's going to be coming throughout the city of Kalamazoo, and seeing the changes I'm really excited for, and definitely want to be a part of more of the process to help support it. And if any of you get a chance on the commission and those city residents, please contact Dorla Bonner, who is the DEI director, to get more updates on the reports and just to see where the city was going, because it's definitely very informative. And I feel like it's taken the city into a positive direction and also going to advance us to make us more better from where we are. And I'm also excited to see Washington Square neighborhood, to see the new businesses that are coming owned by minorities. We have a winery in that neighborhood now. We also have Ty's Place, which is a soul food restaurant that you can also rent out as well for party space. And it's just turned into a beautiful area, especially from where it started from, to see the process. And after the construction that we had last summer, that the roads are better and people are able to actually come and patronize those businesses and bring better lighting to that neighborhood. And so I'm really excited for that. And I just want to thank the city staff for all that they're doing. And I look forward to this next quarter getting to work. And I'm excited to be here with all you guys.
Well, I just want to reiterate, thank you, staff, for everything. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. It's good to see everyone 2 years later. Some of us have longer hair. So, I had an opportunity to attend a meeting, city streets plan that has been put together. It's really exciting. It's a little nerdy, so I won't go into grave detail, but my biggest takeaway from it was the collaboration between planning, public works, engineering, economic development, all these departments that typically in most municipalities live in silos, operate very independently, almost at odds with each other. And because now we're going to be talking about streets not from a curb to curb standpoint, how many lanes can we get, how wide can it be, how fast can we move cars from point to point. Now we're going to be talking about streets from a, front of building to front of building standpoint, right away to right away, even beyond. How can we most safely and effectively move all modes of transportation from point A to point B? And it's really quite striking, and it shows just the collaborative nature of the folks working in those departments, and it's really it's a strong note for the city. So that was my biggest takeaway from it. So I thought I'd share that. Say thank you to everyone, and I look forward to seeing everyone next month. With that, everyone be safe, continue to be safe, and we'll talk again. Seeing nothing else on the agenda, we're adjourned.